Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Okteto's community call. This is the call for November. And today we have Abdul, as always. Welcome, Abdulaziz. How are you?
Hi, thank you. How are you doing, Ramiro?
Pretty good, pretty good. And today we have a special guest, Pablo, CTO of Okteto and the main maintainer of the Okteto CLI is today here with us. How are you, Pablo?
Fine, thank you, Ramiro. Very excited to share the things that we have been working on the Okteto CLI.
Yeah, that's gonna be really cool. Everyone on Slack channel and Twitter was super interested on this. Yeah, what is so exciting is always how these calls we have are like global. I'm in Oakland, California. Abdullah is in where are you these days?
I'm currently in Quora. I'm in Nigeria. Quora.
Oh, Cora, yeah, that's right. And then Pablo is in Madrid. So that's three time zones, three continents. That's the beauty of open source and remote tools is that you can do all these things, which is very exciting. So just before we get into Pablo's presentation, which is really cool, he prepared a lot of like cool stuff. A few kind of like reminders. First is with December coming, it's holidays, end of year, all the celebrations. We're not going to have a community call in December, but we'll be back in January. We have a lot of interesting surprises and a couple of guests by then, so stay tuned. Do subscribe to the Luma link. That is the easiest way to get all notifications on the events, the link to the video, all that stuff. If any of you want to participate, want to join the conversation, please do. We're always happy and looking for people to share their thoughts on Okteto, how they use it on the general space around Kubernetes or developer experience. So please do that. And if you are interested in Kubernetes, dev experience, or of Okteto, and you like to write about it, remember that we have a tech writer program where we are looking for people to share tutorials, editorial pieces. We really want to make the Okteto blog something where a lot of voices are there. So, if you have something you want to share, we have some really cool writers write tutorials on Fast API. That's actually how we met Abdulaziz, on Rust. There was another one on React. And, we're always looking for more people to write cool things there. So check it out. And the other thing is that, as you know, we've been, Abdulaziz has been publishing a video series on Fast API. And this week, we published the last episode. It's a summary where Abdul kind of talked to us about what he learned, all the different cool things you can do with Okteto as you build a Fast API API service. So check it out. The short link is on the screen. And while you're there, subscribe to our channel. We're always producing new content. There's a new videos coming soon. So the easiest way to know that they are coming is to have them there. So please check it out. And finally, before we get into the cool stuff, please go to Okteto/Okteto on GitHub and start the repo. It's an open source. Today, actual talk is going to be on open source and the process we follow to get your feedback and how we incorporate that into our roadmap. So go to the repo, start it. And if you have any comments, any ideas, go to the issues there and find an issue. And this can be anything from documentation, samples you would like to see, features that don't work as you expect, anything like as we always, and I like to say this a lot, we're building this for everyone and for all skills, all skill levels, all type of development, all stacks. So the feedback of everyone is super useful to help us build something that we all like and love to use. So please go there, check it out, start it, and let us know what you think. We're also on Slack. If you go to the Kubernetes Slack on #Okteto, we're there. And with that, it's all the announcements. Now I'm gonna pass the mic to Pablo, and he's gonna share with us a lot of cool things about what happened with Okteto CLI 1.14.6. There are a few new commands that are solving some major issues and what's coming next. So Pablo, thank you for joining us and take it off.
Cool. Yeah, hello everyone. I'm going to share my screen. And then I have a few slides about the new features in Okteto CLI. And I will also do demos for every of the features. So I hope you enjoy the presentation. I'm Pablo. I'm one of the founders and CTO at Okteto. Before Okteto, I used to work at Docker for 4 years, mainly in Docker Hub and Docker Compose. And yeah, they were cool tools. Then Kubernetes appeared and changed everything. And yeah, in Okteto we are trying to provide a DevX experience to work with your application in Kubernetes from development. And one of the most important pieces in Okteto to provide that dev experience is the Okteto CLI. The Okteto CLI is designed to develop on a component running in a Kubernetes cluster. So in this case, we have a namespace with 3 components, a database, an API deployment, and a front-end deployment. And with the Okteto CLI, what I can do is to run Okteto app versus the API deployment. And what is happening is that I'm getting an interactive terminal inside of the API deployment. And the magic here is that all my local file system is synchronized into this interactive terminal. So this interactive terminal feels like local because everything I do in my local file system is immediately available in this interactive terminal, but it's actually running inside of the cluster. It's not running in my laptop, it's running inside of the cluster, reusing the same manifest than the API deployment. So it's fully integrated with my deployment configuration, volume, secrets, service accounts, whatever. And it's running inside of the cluster in the internal network of the cluster. So all the services running there are immediately available with no latency and with no network abstraction because it's running there. So that gives me a much more realistic environment. I'm testing my application in a very similar environment than production inside of Kubernetes. And also in my laptop, I need to run much less things, so it's less noisy and it goes faster to run the rest of things that I need to run in my laptop, like Slack, the IDE, and all those things that already consume a lot of resources. So that's the idea of the Okteto CLI, is to let you iterate on your application running in a cluster, but with a local with a dev experience very similar to working locally with your IDE and a terminal. And this is a summary of this year in the Okteto CLI. Right now we are in 1,900 stars in GitHub, so please help us get to 2,000. I made a bet with Ramiro that we will get to 2,000 before the end of the year, so help me to win this bet. And then this year it has been awesome. We had more than 40 contributors, more than 170 forks. This is people that is customizing the Okteto CLI for their needs. It's more than 1,500 commits. And this is interesting. More or less 50% of our users are using Mac, and the other half is between Linux and Windows. But yeah, remember that the Okteto CLI is portable and it works on any operating system and also in ARM. And another thing which is interesting is how people is using the Okteto CLI. So in this month, 16% of the people is using the Okteto CLI in local clusters like Minikube or Kubernetes in Docker. And the rest of the people is using remote clusters. That makes sense because the Okteto CLI gives you, give you more value when you are developing your application on remote. It can be used also in local clusters, but The main target is to develop on remote. And then this is interesting. The rest of the people, more or less, one half is using the Okteto CLI with the Okteto platform, Okteto Cloud, Okteto Enterprise, and all that. And the other half is using the Okteto CLI in their remote clusters, Azure Kubernetes Service, Amazon Kubernetes Service, Google Kubernetes Service, all those cool services provided by the cloud providers. So this is very important for us because more than half of our users are getting value from the Okteto CLI as a standalone CLI tool. And that's why we are going to invest much more on improving the experience of the Okteto CLI in this scenario. So, some of the features that I'm going to show are already on this with this goal in mind. But in the next year, we will keep improving the experience of the Okteto CLI as a standalone tool. So before going into the features, thank you everyone for your feedback, for your support. It really helps us to make a better product. Yeah, and it's open source, so yeah. Open issues, give your feedback, join our Slack channel in the Kubernetes community Slack, share your thoughts, open pull requests if you need to implement anything on the Okteto CLI. You are more than welcome to do all those things. So now let's go to the next features and problems that we are solving with these features. The first problem, and this is, I mean, it's not very common, but when it happens, it's a problem. And this is people running Okteto app by mistake in production, which is the worst, but also in another environments. Maybe you are running Okteto app in staging, and that's not what you were trying to do. You were trying to run Okteto app in your dev cluster to iterate in your application, but somehow you switch your kubeconfig to do some queries in staging. You forget that you are talking to staging, and then you run Okteto app again to develop, and then that's where the problem is. So the main problem here is that Okteto app is reusing the kubeconfig configuration, your current kubeconfig configuration, to create your development container. What's the solution that we have implemented? It's Okteto Context. The idea with Okteto Context is that the context for the Okteto CLI is now independent from your current kubeconfig configuration. And it's a conscious decision. You configure your Okteto context. At that moment, every Okteto CLI command works on that context. You can switch your config. The Okteto CLI keeps working on the same context. And if you want your Okteto CLI to work on a different cluster, then it's a conscious decision. You need to run Okteto context again and point to a different cluster. So it's not something hidden. It's not like I'm switching my kubeconfig to access staging and then Okteto is talking to staging, which was very confusing. So let me show you a demo.
Yeah, that's a really cool feature. I might have done Okteto up in like production more than once.
Yeah.
Especially in the early days. So it's really cool, and it's something that it's just hard to remember, and we've heard this from people, so it's really cool that now we can do this.
Let me show you how
Can you make the font a little bit bigger? Or, I mean, yeah, just to make it, so maybe I can see it. It looks sharper.
Yeah,
okay.
Looks good.
So I'm going to deploy an application. This is my dev cluster. Let me show you. Okay, I'm going to show my Kubernetes context. Oh, it's not working autocomplete. Okay, So I have two different Kubernetes contexts here, my development cluster and my production cluster, okay? So right now I'm in my development cluster. I executed kubectl apply to deploy my application. It's a Python Hello World application. Now my application is running here. No. Could I start? It should be here, right? No. One second. Maybe an issue at the engineers level. Yeah, I think it's because I have another ingress here with the same. Let me remove this. Okay.
And we know that it's real. It's a real demo. It's not a pre-canned thing. There we go.
Yeah, I was doing testing and I had the same ingress host in a different namespace. So okay, I have my application running here. This is running in a remote cluster in Google. It's a Hello World application. I'm gonna be doing some changes here. So let's do that. I'm gonna open my IDE. This is the application. This is the current state of my local file system. And I have an alias here, which is the old Okteto CLI version. Okay, so I'm going to run Okteto app here. And that way I can start working on my application and iterate on my application in Kubernetes. So this is running Okteto app, it's synchronizing my local file system, and then it's starting the application. Now, if I refresh, what's going on here? Wait, should be getting. Why is not getting?
Is it a different namespace?
No, it's okay. 1 second. Yeah, let's do something. I'm going to change the application to just return. It's because it's getting the value from an environment variable. I'm going to save. Then application is refreshing, and if I refresh here, I'm getting the changes. So while I'm iterating on the application,
live developing on the cluster.
Live developing on the cluster, yeah. like live fixing of the demo. Okay, so so the problem is I'm working here, right? And then I'm going to open a different terminal. And imagine that this is not very common to access production directly from kubectl, but let's say I need to do something and I do kubectl get all. I'm working in production. It's a different namespace where I have many things running here, right? And then I go back again. Here, I was developing. I go back to this terminal again, and I run Okteto app again. When I'm doing this, I'm actually running Okteto app in my production namespace. As you can see here, the context is production, the namespace is Okteto, because I switched my kube config in this terminal. And this is very dangerous because it's not a conscious decision. It's something that you do at the kubectl level, but it's affecting your Okteto session. So it's very dangerous, and that's why we have implemented Okteto context. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to do the same thing, but using Okteto context. So let's go back to development. I'm going to run Okteto down here with the previous Okteto CLI version. And then I'm going to do the same with Okteto app. This is the first time I'm going to run Okteto app with the latest CLI version. So the first thing is going to ask me, what is the context for Okteto? In this case, my context is the development cluster. And then from now on, every Okteto CLI command will work on this cluster. And let's see how if it's working. I have my application running, same thing than before, right?
Yes.
I'm going to stop here. I'm going to switch to the production kubectl context, and I'm going to run Okteto app again. As you can see, it's telling me that it's still using the hello world namespace in the development context. That way, it's very hard to make those kind of problems. If I want to switch to a different context, I had to do it manually on the Okteto CLI. And then here, if I want to switch to production or any other context, I have to do it manually, and then Okteto app will work on that cluster. But usually, you are working in a single development cluster, so the most common use case is to pick one context, and from there, Okteto CLI is always working on that context.
Cool.
So that's the first feature. I don't know if you have comments, questions.
Yes, I do. Before we move on, so there's a third option, which is to create a new context. So when I deploy an application for the first time, is a context created, or do I have to create a new one?
So the first time that you run any Okteto CLI, the Okteto CLI asks for the context that you want to use. And the context basically is a Kubernetes cluster. So and from there, it's always using the same context. It doesn't prompt for the context anymore. At least you change your context manually.
Okay, cool. And so I do not have to have a very experience, like very good experience with Kubernetes to have to switch context. Okteto handles all of this. So, I can just like switch using Okteto CLI instead of having to run kubectl, get context. I think it's more straightforward. Is that?
Yeah. We also have other features before related to context and namespaces. Basically, in your Okteto manifest, you can also specify the context and the namespace. And that way, when you are running the Okteto CLI in that namespace, it always uses that context and namespace.
Cool.
So if you are using different applications in different clusters, that's a good way to define your context in your manifest, and then you don't need to switch context between applications.
Nice.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. And this is the problem. And this was only a problem when using the Okteto CLI in your own cluster. If you are running the Okteto platform with Okteto Cloud or Okteto Enterprise, this wasn't a problem. But as I told you, we are working on improving the experience in the Okteto CLI as a standalone tool. So we have been working on this. The problem is that when you are running Okteto app, you cannot apply kubectl apply changes while the Okteto app session is running. And that's because Okteto app was changing the manifest of the deployment. And then if you reapply changes, it was a mess because it was very difficult to know what is coming from your changes and what was coming from the Okteto transformation. So let me show you what was the experience. Let's do this. Okay, I'm going to run Okteto down here again. And I'm going to run Okteto up with previous version of Okteto CLI. Okay. Okay, so now the application is running. And let's do something. I'm gonna get this value from an environment variable. And the environment variable here is gonna be hello everyone in the Okteto community. Okay? So this is the old Okteto CLI, right? I'm going to run Okteto apply with my new deployment manifest. And then what happens? What happens is that my dev container is recreated. That has to be because it's a new deployment manifest. But then Okteto app is not able to reconnect. It says that the app deployment has been modified. And then you need to do several steps here that are difficult to understand. But basically, you need to do Okteto down. Then apply your changes again. Then run Okteto app again. And then you are ready to go. But this is a very bad experience, right? And it introduces friction if you need to change your deployment manifest while you are developing.
Yeah.
Let's see that it's working at least. It should get a new message now. Okay. Okay, so let's do the same with the latest Okteto CLI. I'm going to stop this, Okteto down. I'm going to say, I'm going to come back to this message, kubectl apply. Then I do Okteto app, but with the latest Okteto CLI. It's activating. Also, Okteto app is now faster than before when creating the pod. But okay, let me show you. So now Okteto app is running. I'm going to put this message again. You can see that it's running the previous message. Now I'm going to do Okteto apply. What is happening is that, yes, it's reconnecting because a new pod is being generated, but then it's getting the new deployment configuration and it's starting my dev container again. And if I go here, the changes are available. So there is a reconnection because the pod is a new one, but the session is not lost. The session reconnects by itself and it refreshes with the changes.
And you also you keep your cache, right? Like if you're using volumes, like all your artifacts are going to be there.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. The other thing I like for this a lot is for Helm charts, right? I think that's one of the comments we got before was that because when you're developing a Helm chart is very typical that you write some code, then you go to Helm chart, modify your manifest, add some config, whatnot, do Helm upgrade, and that worked weird before with Okteto. So I think it's going to enable that kind of development, which I really like, especially if you're using your own Cube cluster.
right.
Or make it.
Yeah, this was only an issue if you are using your own cluster. In the Okteto platform, there was a different solution using mutation webhooks and all that, which are not available in your own cluster. But yeah, it's important to provide the same experience. And the way it works, I'm not going into the details, but if I do kubectl get all here, the way it works internally is that we are not changing the original deployment anymore. We just scale to 0 the original deployment. And then there is a mirror deployment, which is this definition plus the Okteto app transformation. And also Okteto app in the background is running a watcher in this deployment. So if you change anything here, the watcher fires a new container with the latest changes in this deployment plus the Okteto app transformation.
That code is pretty cool. For those of you, check it out, because I didn't realize you could do that with watchers. It's pretty cool that the pod subscribes to changes in the deployment on like the mirror deployment, and that causes the pod itself to relaunch, and then Okteto reconnects. It's a pretty neat way to kind of like be aware that something changed instead of having to like pull all the time, or like let the user stop, restart like before. That was really cool.
I think it's very useful for people working in teams. You have a shared application and deployments, and you can make changes, and Pablo gets an updated information that yes, the manifest has been changed. Yep, I think it's a very cool solution. That's the next one.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. Next problem, Okteto build. So in previous Okteto CLI versions, Okteto build was configured by default in Okteto Cloud. By the way, this is a very powerful command. I encourage you to check it out. Basically, it's the same syntax than Docker, but your build is not happening in your local Docker daemon. It's happening in a build kit server running in Okteto Cloud. So you don't need to run Docker locally if you need to build your images. So it's a pretty cool command, but sometimes you want to run the build locally, because it's not only about the Okteto build command. The Okteto build command is also integrated with Okteto stacks, for example, to build your images from your Docker Compose files. And it's also integrated, for example, is the one I'm going to use in the demo, with Okteto push. Okteto push applies your changes into your deployment. So basically it builds an image, it tags a new version of the image, and then it updates your Kubernetes deployment manifest with the latest tag. And all that was only working if you build your images in Okteto Cloud by default. But now, to improve the experience when you want to use your own cluster, Okteto build also talks to your local Docker daemon. So let me show you that. I'm here, and I'm going to use Okteto push for that. For example, let's say that I do the change. Hello, everyone. Okay, and I'm done with Okteto app. I just want to test my application with the final Docker image. So basically, I want to build my image and apply the image to the deployment. That's what Okteto push does. I can do Okteto push, but this is what was happening before. I'm not logged into Okteto Cloud or any other Okteto Enterprise instance, so I cannot build any image. But if I use the latest Okteto CLI, it works. And it works because it's building my image in my Docker desktop. And it's pushing the image to my registry in Docker Hub, creating a new image, is deactivating my Okteto app session, and then is updating the deployment definition with this digest that I just pushed. So if I do Okteto, I'll get all. This is just deployed. Let's check the image. As you can see, the image is the tag Okteto that I just built. And if I refresh my application, is the message that I have currently here. So this is a very convenient way to, if you need to redeploy your application and go through the build, push, redeploy phase, instead of doing all those things manually, you just do Okteto push and that's all. And now it's working also with your local Docker daemon. Any question about Okteto push?
I was
Okteto
muted.
build?
There, I have a question about Okteto build. I think this is something we haven't talked about it a lot, but it also works with BuildKit, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's not very well documented, but yeah, if you have a BuildKit server running anywhere, you can configure via an environment variable your BuildKit host, and then Okteto build works on your BuildKit server. And that's very powerful because, yeah, Okteto build is just the same syntax that Docker build. You don't need to learn anything new. But by using Okteto build, it's a very convenient way to run your builds on remote. And usually on remote means faster, more storage, more CPU, more memory. You can also share your BuildKit server with other people in your team. So you are reusing the same Docker cache. So everything is much faster. So yeah,
And I feel like
it's a
BuildKit,
very powerful tool.
yeah, BuildKit is really cool. It doesn't get a lot of publicity, but I feel like any Docker build, like BuildKit has all these really cool features for like caching and reusing layers that is much faster. At least that's my impression. Every time I use BuildKit, I feel like my builds just are faster than Docker build.
Yeah, well, we were talking the other day about writing series of blog posts about BuildKit for different programming languages, because there is not much context about how to optimize your Docker builds with BuildKit, and it's super powerful. I've seen Docker files going from 30 minutes to 1 minute just by adding a few lines of BuildKit optimizations with cache and multi-state builds. It's super powerful.
Oh, I have a question. So, in the previous version, you have to be logged in to build, but now you don't. So what if I have an active session with Okteto CLI, and I just want to use the local Docker daemon? How is there a way to switch?
So it's related to the context. When you
Okay.
run Okteto context, by default, if you choose an Okteto URL, then builds will happen in the builder in the BuildKit server of this Okteto installation, in this case Okteto Cloud. If you choose any other Kubernetes context, then builds will happen in your local Docker daemon.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so yeah, let's go to the last one. The last one is still a work in progress, so I'm not gonna do the demo, but this is also very powerful, and I think this is the top feature requirement by anyone in the community. So the problem is that to run a Okteto app, I first need to deploy my application, and that introduces friction. Because of several things. Sometimes one in your team is configuring Okteto app and the Kubernetes manifest, but maybe not everyone in the team understands how to deploy everything together. And if you need to tell everyone to run kubectl here and then Okteto app, and then you pull from master and maybe there are changes in your deployment manifest, and you need to apply your changes again before running Okteto app. But maybe not everyone is doing that, and then is running Okteto app with an older version of the deployment. All those things, when you are working in large teams, they become a problem. When you are working in a large team, you really need one single command to do everything. And that's what we are working on, is to let you run Okteto app, and Okteto app will make anything that is needed to deploy your application, build your Docker images, and activate your dev mode in your deployment to start developing. And to do that, we are going to do many things. The first one is to have a deploy section in your Okteto manifest. This is the Okteto manifest I've been using in the demo. Basically, it's the name of my deployment, an environment variable to activate the development mode in Flask, my dev command, and how I'm syncing my local folder into the container. So in the new manifest, there will be here a deploy section, which is just a sequence of commands. In this case, it's very simple. It's just kubectl apply of my manifest, but here I may have Helm commands, Okteto build commands, test, whatever I need to deploy my application in Kubernetes. And then I may have, in this case, it's just one dev definition for the app deployment, which is basically the same than here, but instead of having a name field, the name becomes the key for this development container. And I may have more than one. We have seen companies with 8 and 10 different Okteto manifests on the same repo. And it's much better to have a single way, a single place to define your development containers. And then when you run Okteto app, you just pick as an argument the deployment that you want to develop. So in this case, it would be Okteto app. In this case, it's only one. So if you only run Okteto app, it'll just defaults to this development container. And the general behavior is that now Okteto knows how to deploy your application. It's a sequence of commands. We don't want to introduce a new format. You already are familiar with Helm, kubectl. So just use those commands. What Okteto is doing under the hood is anything created from these instructions is labeled by Okteto with a special label. So we know what is being deployed here. And if you run, for example, Okteto destroy, we know what has to be destroyed automatically. So that gives you the flexibility of using your well-known commands to deploy your application. But under the hood, we managed to label all those resources so we know what you deployed. And also, it gives you a single command experience. Now I just run Okteto app. If the application is deployed, Okteto app. If the application is not deployed, Okteto app will deploy the application and then activate your dev container. If the application is already deployed, then the deploy phase is skipped and just the dev container is created. And to do that, we do many low-level things to detect that the application has changed or not. But yeah, the idea is that from now on, the deploy section is optional. If you want to keep using Okteto app as is working today, this manifest is also working in the new version. But if you want to define the deployment of your application, you have that option, and it will be done automatically when you run Okteto app.
So Pablo, in the normally we have this auto create option in our Okteto manifest. Does deploy take away the need for that, or we can use both?
Yeah, the auto create. You can still use auto create here for every development container, and if you don't need the deploy section, you can still use the previous format. Both are compatible. So if you only care about running a dev container and there are not more services involved in your dev environment, yeah, probably the syntax is simpler, and you just create here the auto create field.
Cool. So the new section is just to enable people or customers that have like tens, hundreds of sub containers to quickly run and spin up their development environments. So
Yeah.
once we eradicate of more manifests and everything is just in one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just in one manifest and just in one command. To reduce friction, basically. This is very important in large teams. Any new command that you need to run to start developing is one more option to make it run. So having a single command to spin your dev environment is very important.
Yep. Cool. Thank you very much, Pablo. It's really amazing features we have, and we'll be on the lookout for when the deploy section is merged. I think it's amazing. And
Yeah, once it's done, we can also do another community call and give a demo and explain a little bit more how it works under the hood. And yeah, the deploy section, the idea is to have it ready before the end of the year, but then we have many features coming on the next year to run your test, to check the logs of your application. So there are many things coming.
That is pretty cool. There's a question on the live stream from Daniel. And hi, Daniel. Thanks for joining. Also, Gish, I always pronounce your name wrong. I'm sorry. And Alan, thank you for joining. Daniel is saying, could we label or annotate our own deployments with the same label you use with deploy, and then use that to delete or destroy our own deployments?
Yes, I would like to know more about the use case to do that. But yeah, I'm going to explain a little bit how it works. What is happening here is that when you run Okteto app with this manifest, we run a proxy in localhost, and then we dynamically configure kubeconfig to talk to this proxy. And in this proxy, basically what we are doing is to every resource created through the Kubernetes API, we are adding a label there. And with that label, we know what you deployed or what you didn't. And it's just a label, and the label is the name of your current folder. So basically, if you add that label to any other resource, then if you run Okteto destroy, it will be also destroyed. If you run, for example, Okteto logs in the future, it's not available yet, you will get the logs also from that resource, because everything will be based on those labels.
See the amazing features we have coming. And I think if you want to get up to date, there are many options. Like you have to follow us on Twitter, subscribe to this channel, and even join Slack community so you can get up to date. Yes, this is amazing. I'm pumped as well to see how this feature comes to play. I think next year is going to be
this is really cool.
amazing.
And thank you, Pablo, for this super thorough explanation. Honestly, when I asked you to join, I was not expecting. This is really cool. I learned a lot. And just everyone, I want to remind you that we want to build this in the open. We have a lot of plans for next year to make it even more open than now. So please, all your questions, your help on the Slack channel, on Twitter, on GitHub are super helpful. So thank you, everyone. We now have 42 contributors on the CLI. Just before the the community call. I was preparing this PR because we want to put like everybody's avatars at the on a README just to kind of like as a thank you. So it's amazing. It's the community keeps growing. So please, anything you think we can do to make it better, whether it is more documentation, more technical deep dives like what Pablo did today. We love to do more of this. And as I said, like Abdulaziz and I have a lot of ideas for next year, for January, to kind of take our community to the next level and kind of help everyone engage more, take a bigger advantage of Okteto. So please reach out. We're in Slack, we're in Twitter, we are on YouTube every month. So with that, Pablo, Abdulaziz, is there anything else you want to say before we sign out?
Once again, I think if you haven't subscribed to the channel, it's important you do so you don't miss out. And recently I just concluded the first API series. Ramiro mentioned it earlier. So I'd like if you watch, give us your feedback. If you've used Okteto, we want to see your experience, want to hear about it, what are the cool things you've tried, and if there's anything you want us to, add, open an issue, or send a pull request. We love contributors. It's open source, and we're building it for everyone. So you're welcome. So yep, Pablo.
Yeah, just say thank you everyone for joining the call, and I hope you enjoy the new features.
Yeah, thank you. And just to add to what Abdul was saying, we're also looking not just code, like documentation will be a great contribution. Samples will be another fantastic contribution. Like if you write something like a sample, a blog post, anything on Okteto, we have a samples repo. Let me put it on the screen. It's learning how to use this new thing we're using, StreamYard, by the way. That is wrong. Is samples, not samples.
Yeah.
Let me do that again. Look at live. It's there, so check it out. We have a list of samples there. We're trying to collect different platforms, different stacks, use cases. Like we have examples there on how to use Okteto on like anything: Go, Java, Elixir, PHP, Ruby, Python, .NET. So if we're missing your favorite stack, if there's something you haven't been able to quite figure out how to do, let us know. Or if you did and you want to share with the community, please send a PR there. More than welcome, to make it easier for everybody else. But yeah, please contribute. And same thing with docs. We're going to do a big push for new docs in January, December, January. So anybody who likes to do those things, we'll appreciate the help. And yeah, well, that's it. Once again, Abdulaziz and Pablo, thanks so much. This was very exciting. I'm very, very excited. I've been trying Okteto CLI, of course, for a few days now. I really like context. I'm really looking forward to the deploy thing. And for everybody who joined, thank you. Thanks for the questions, Daniel. Your use case sounds really interesting about connecting to your CD pipeline. So we should talk more about it on Slack. Curious to learn more and how we can enable that even better.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. And just before we log out, reminding to start our repo. There's a bet going. And we can get to 2K stars within the year. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be a good thing. So yeah. It's going to make Pablo happy.
There will be some wine for sure to whatever it happens.
Exactly. All right. Well, it's good seeing you all. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next month. Hopefully, we'll be chat before that on Slack or on Twitter. Thank you, Abdulaziz. Pablo, good seeing you both. Bye.